Voice, the global project that brought about a remarkable turnaround in public sentiment towards the Catholic Church during the visit of Pope Benedict XVI in UK. All the skepticism throughout all skepticism changed towards the love for the church and the Pope. To share more about Catholic Voices movement, let us welcome on stage Mr. Jack Valero.
Hello, and I'm very sorry to be late, but the traffic wasn't so good. Very surprising for Manila, I think. And anyway, we can start the presentation. How do we start the presentation? Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to speak about our duty to change public opinion as Catholics and change the way that people think based on my experiences in communication. I'm very happy to be here in Santo Tomas. This is my second visit to the Philippines. When I was here 9 years ago, I came to this university, which is a very old university, the oldest in Asia. So I was very happy to be here. So I was very happy to be invited to this event too. How do I put forward this thing? It doesn't seem to. Where is the computer? It's over there. Anyway, I can't pass, but can you pass the next slide? That's it. So one thing I found, because I'm in media sometimes, the other 2 days ago I was in Sky News talking about the fantastic meeting of Pope Leo with King Charles. So I was speaking there in a program that lasted 2 hours, and it was really nice. But when I noticed that and then I put the clips in YouTube, when I speak about the Philippines, then the hits are like 10 times as many as normal. So these ones, when I spoke in 2015 about the visit of the Pope, Pope Francis to the Philippines, and in CNN and then on BBC, it went to 58,000, 84,000. When I spoke about Duterte in just before I came here in 2016, very risky subject, I got 67,000. So I'm very happy about the Philippines. Lots of fans here in the Philippines. So that's really good. Now the next one. So I wanted to start with St. John Henry Newman, who you may have heard of. He was an English man who lived in the 19th century and who was beatified by Pope Benedict in 2010 and canonized in 2019 by Pope Francis. And I was very lucky to be named the spokesman for the ceremony of the beatification, and then in 2019 for the canonization. So I had to read a lot of stuff by him. This week he was named co-patron of Catholic education, together with Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas was a very clever man, and Newman also. And so somehow, because you're running a Catholic university here, he's related to you too. And on the 1st of November, so in less than a week, in about a week, he will be named Doctor of the Church, which is the most exclusive club in the church, because there are only 38 doctors. So they have something important to tell us, these people. And one of the things that I wanted to say today about him, and he wrote a lot about education, about conscience, about the laity, and so on. He was a convert. He was an Anglican who became a Catholic, and then a priest, and then eventually a cardinal. Was that halfway through his long life, when he was 44 years old, he became a Catholic, and he lost everything. He lost his job, his income, his house, his friends, his family, everything. And by the time he died, and there'd been many converts in all that time, but by the time he died, it was okay to become Catholic. People didn't lose their job, their family, their friends, and so on. So he was very, forward. He was very, he was responsible for this change of opinion with a few others, but he was the main person who was responsible for this change of public opinion in the country. And I wanted to put this quote here because he thought that if you gave good formation, training, education to lay people like ourselves here in this room, we are full of, it's a room, I see a couple of priests, a few priests, but mostly lay people. Thank you. And if you give formation to lay people, they will be able to communicate everything about the church, and they will be able to change public opinion. And he had this thing about public opinion that he said this: the great instrument of propagating moral truth is personal knowledge. A man finds himself in a definite place, he grows up in it and into it, he draws persons around him, they know him, he knows them. Thus it is that ideas are born which are to live, that works begin that are to last. It is this personal knowledge of each other which is true public opinion. Local opinion is real public opinion, which I found very refreshing because, you know, if you talk to your friends and you've changed the environment where you are, and you do that, and you do that, and you do that, and I do that, and we all do that. Like Newman changed the whole country, the opinion of the whole country about becoming Catholic. Before it was not okay. By the time he died, it was okay. And he this huge change. And he says, well, look, this is done by all of us changing public opinion where we are. And that's really amazing. And you know, he wrote many books and so on, but he thought we should do it one by one as lay people, wherever we are. And I would like to say that everyone is called to communicate. There was something else before, but it went too fast. That's it. We're all called to communicate. This is a quote from Pope Francis. And as sons and daughters of God, we're called to communicate with everyone, without exception. The Church's words and actions are meant to convey mercy, to touch people's hearts. So Newman told us that we can change public opinion by talking to the people in our environment. Pope Francis told us, he was here, and it was a great trip, of course, that we need to communicate with everyone, and all of us have to do it. So one of the ways that, and there are many ways to communicate, but the one I'm going to explain today is communicating through controversies. When some controversy arises, this is your great opportunity to communicate. I know there is a big controversy now here about corruption and so on, and you know, I've been in Philippines one day, so it would be arrogant for me to offer you the solution to this problem, but it is a very serious thing, and everyone is talking about it. And this is our opportunity to communicate. When something happens, maybe people aren't interested in religion so much, normally, but when there is some controversy, then they want to communicate. So I want to tell you briefly our experience with the Catholic Voices project that we started in 2010, which involved, which was a group of people which we prepared towards the visit of Pope Benedict to the UK in 2010, which was mentioned in the introduction, and for which there was quite a lot of negativity as he was preparing to come. That's 15 years ago, and people were saying, well, some people said we don't want him to come, and that caused some controversy. And we felt that this would be a way, what would happen is that the media would be interested in this matter. The media are not interested in religion in Britain, or in Philippines, I don't think. But when there is some controversy, they're interested. When there's something going on, we felt there would be interest. But not so many people were ready to speak. Not so many people were prepared to give an account of what they believed and why. And so we thought, okay, let's prepare people for media. The media will be interested. We will select people, we will prepare them, we will put them out there on TV and radio to speak, understanding how the media works and learning the best way to get our message across. So we did that, and during the visit, we managed to appear in 100 news programs between us in the little team that we formed. Many times we explained, and this was put together in a book called How to Defend the Faith Without Raising Your Voice. And this book has been published all over the world. This particular edition is the edition from the Philippines that was published in 2016 in the Philippines. So you can still get it here in the Philippines, this version, which was more economic. But basically what we're saying is, let's find out how best to communicate what we have in our hearts so that it gets across. This is a thing that we all want to do. We all want to do that. So it's difficult because we're sometimes frightened by controversy. I find people get frightened, and I say to people, well, look, if there is a controversy, that's your chance to communicate. Do not despise, so it's the same. Or there is some thing that's gone wrong in the church, or they're saying about a priest, or about the Vatican or the Pope or whatever, and I don't want to talk about it because it's too, it's not nice. And therefore I will wait till tomorrow when the controversy is no longer there. But guess what? Tomorrow nobody's interested in your views on anything. But today they're interested. So today, if you are good at having good messages, you can get in. Then some people are angry because they think that the media attack the church and so on. Well, that's not true. Not even in England, which is a non-Catholic country and now more and more secularized. That's not true. The media reflect common opinion, public opinion, which we need to change little by little through our friends, as we said, through Newman. And the reason that there are not so many Catholics speaking in media is because we're not that good. We may be boring or say things that we don't know how to say the things, or we don't know how to get in there. But once you know how to get in there, how to say things and so on, they are very open. And I'm talking about England, which would think to me, the BBC and ITV and all these channels, Sky, it's easy to get into those if you can do it. And another problem is being defensive. I'm attacked, so I defend myself, and that doesn't communicate very much. So we're trying to get over that. And what we said to people is, okay, before you speak, you should understand what people are thinking about you. And sometimes they're thinking, what are they thinking about you that determines how they will judge what you say? And this is the question, what are they thinking about me as a Catholic? When we train people to speak about the church, we always ask them to think of this before they say anything. What are they thinking about you as a Catholic? And well, think to ask ourselves, right? So if I had more time, I would ask you, go around the tables and ask you, but I haven't got time now to do that, so you'll be glad to know. So I won't ask anybody. But, they may say things like, well, the church preaches messages that are old-fashioned, that they seek to impose their teaching on other people, etc. And but one of the things that is many people think in the different parts of the world is that the church is more concerned with its doctrine, reputation, possessions, etc., than the well-being of people. They think, well, if only the other day I was talking to somebody who said, oh, I'm an atheist, but I'm an atheist, okay. But, if the Vatican sold all its property in the Vatican museums, we could resolve all the problems of poverty all around the world. Well, actually not true, but that's the thing people think. They don't care about poverty in the Philippines or in other countries. They have these beautiful things in the Vatican. Or the church is concerned with its doctrine on life rather than on helping young women who have been abused or whatever and can't carry on with their pregnancies. So the church is more concerned with its doctrine on life than in helping people who are very suffering in hospital, wanting to die. Yeah? So it seems the church seems more interested in its ideas, sort of abstract things, than in the well-being of people, real people with real needs and so on. And then I say to people, okay, that's what some people think of us. What do you think of them? And okay, that's another question. It's a good question to ask myself, you know. And what do I think of people who criticize the church? Well, and then I go around, and then they say, oh, well, they seek to, they're really pushy. They impose their agenda on me, and they want to change society, and they want to change all the laws to allow everything that I don't like. And then I think, oh, they think you impose on them, and you think they impose on you. And it's like a mirror, you know. It's like a mirror. We think of each other the same thing. And do you know why that is? And that's the real key of this method that we developed back in 2010, which we have used since, which is that behind their criticisms, there's always a Christian value that we share. So every criticism appeals to a value, which almost always is a Christian value which we share. So you say, you know, the church is more interested in its property than in helping the poor. Well, love for the poor is a Christian value. We preach it. The church is more interested in its doctrine on life than helping people who are suffering and wanting to die. Well, compassion for people who suffer is something that the church preaches, comes from Christ. In fact, there was no compassion really before Christ in that people who were in a bad way, they were chucked out of the village and maybe killed as scapegoats before. But now with Christ, we actually look after the people who suffer. So it's the opposite. It's a value that is being thrown into our face, or you're more concerned about your doctrine on marriage than on two men who love each other and so on. So it's a value of love and so on. These Christian values that we share that are being thrown on our face. So that's really interesting, because what we taught our team to do when they were going to go on TV was to think of the frame, what people think of me, to find those values in common, those shared values, and then to give our messages based on those common values, that common ground, because then we can be completely empathetic with everyone, and we can say the things that we want in full, and that's really good, because it normally when faced with a question, I might just give the answer, and then that answer may hurt, you know. When I hear somebody saying to me, I need to tell the truth, I immediately get a bit scared, you know, because I think he's going to hit me now. Pope Francis used to say, the truth is like a diamond, you know, it's beautiful when I show it to you in my hand, but it really hurts when I throw it to you at your face, you know, the diamond really hurts. So we have to be careful. And so that's how we give our messages in reframing. So, and I remember that we were preparing for this, and there were the people who were protesting the Pope's visit, and they wanted to have a meeting about the gripes and so on. So we sent one of our guys there as a Catholic to observe them, and they had these speeches talking about the things that they didn't like about the church and the Pope and so on. And then at the end they said, oh, and you're a Catholic, so what do you think about this? Like, we're going to beat you up now. And he said, yeah, I think that these problems that you bring up, you know, population, abuse, and poverty, and so on, they're real problems, you know, real problems. We would like to work on them together with you. The Pope is coming to tell us how to approach these problems together as a society. So then they realized that he'd been listening to them and understanding the frame and so on. So they actually took his details and wanted to be in touch and so on. They toned down their protests. They actually cancelled their first protest, which was the next day. They did the big one, but they cancelled the first one. I think we did manage to get something across. And I remember also another one about the shared value, because when you think about very difficult topics like abuse by priests, then what we want and what everybody wants is exactly the same. So our shared value is 100% shared, because we all want this never to happen, to stop and to never happen again, and to put things right, and abusers to be punished and victims to be helped. And we had a talk from somebody who had been abused to our team, to tell us what they wanted, and we realized that what he was saying was exactly what we wanted, and which was very funny, because he was the main victims group in public. He led the victims group in the media, and there was some document from the Pope then the following week, and we sent our representative to the BBC to explain what the document was about. And in the studio, because she was called Fiona, she met the opposite. The person speaking against her was the same guy called Peter, who had given us the talk, at the end of which we had agreed that we wanted exactly the same. And so the presenter said, these rules by the Vatican, what do you think, Fiona? And Fiona said, well, I think it's really, really good progress. It's not solved, but it's work in progress. We like the direction of this. And Peter, what do you think? I completely agree with Fiona. And then, okay. And so what is your view? No, I think it's work in progress. Okay, and Fiona, what do you think? I completely agree with Peter, and so on. So it was just a feast of agreement. And that's really wonderful, isn't it? That we know that we communicate things that we all want, and we don't have to fight, and so on. And another thing we told people was that they should be light. So I recommend in this method that we should be, what we found was that this method that we developed for TV also worked in our conversations with our friends and the people that we were with, and our colleagues at work, the pupils at the school where you teach or whatever. This also worked in the same way, and so we gave little pieces of advice, one of which was light, not heat. It was a very easy one that is a sort of media principle, that if you're in media, you should give light. And this also applies in our ordinary life. If we are well informed and well prepared, then you can give light on all these topics. So if you want to speak about things in a way, empathetic way, then it's really important to know a lot. You say not very much, but you know a lot. And that, that involves reading not only the catechism, really thick catechism, really good to read in full, but also the newspaper and what's the news, or wherever you get the information. So you know what's going on, and you can provide light. And then, more important than that, was another principle, which is, in our communication, we are witnessing to who we are, rather than winning any battles. We don't need to win any battles. And witnessing is really important. It's not a battle. It's witnessing to who you are, what you believe, and letting God make the transformation. And I say to people, look, if you speak about a topic of religion, then you should speak like a Catholic. What does the Catholic faith? What is the Catholic faith about? Well, it's about loving God above all things, and then loving other people as yourself, loving people as God, who loves them unconditionally. So when you speak, this has to come through. This is also like the way you speak and say those things is more important than the things you say, although you need to say the right things, of course, but in that context. And that makes a big difference, So we have developed actually the 10 principles of civil communication. I told you number 1, number 2, and number 9. I've just explained, but there are another 7. If you Google the 10 principles of civil communication from Catholic Voices, you get the 10 titles and the explanation for each of them. I've just explained briefly those, but basically it's a very, very effective way to communicate what's in my heart. I was today giving a formation course to a group of 10 people about how to communicate. And the thing I kept saying is, you didn't say that very well, but I know, because I know you, that in your heart, you think differently. I know what you think in your heart, but what you said is not what you think. You said something that somehow you read in a book or something. It's not what you have here. Once you know how to communicate really well, you know how to get this thing out from your heart into your mouth and say it properly. And that really communicates things of the faith. And that's amazing, because we all want to do that. We all want to do that very much. So we've got not much time, but that's what we recommend when we analyze a topic or a story. What is the frame? What does the other side think of me, of us? What is the positive intention behind what's the thing we share in common? And what is my message in 3 easy points? And usually here I give an example, which I then talk to the people about. But the example I had prepared is this one, which probably we don't have enough time to cover it in full. But what I wanted to say about the Catholic teaching on chastity, of which there are frames which are very strong out there, especially in my country. The Catholic teaching on chastity is completely taboo, and also here, and I asked people, what is the frame of this teaching, and I would really ask the people, but I'm just going to put it here. When I've given this talk, people have been telling me, okay, so people have been telling me, well, Catholic teaching on chastity is old-fashioned, restrictive on people's freedom, that the church preaches a message that not even its leaders are ready to follow, that the church puts its teaching about the real needs of real people. Does that sound familiar, that people think that? Do they think that in the Philippines too? Many people. And yet, so there are more things that they think negatively about you. I've just started putting some down because I ran out of space, but I could put some more. But now the really interesting thing is, once you've got this frame, is to think, well, what are the shared values? And are there any? And that the surprise is there are many, many shared values with society. Can you think of any? If you talk to your neighbor and say, I think this is shared, 100%. When I think this teaching, this Catholic teaching, is something that people accept in this area. Just think I'll put up my results from the other talks, but just think for 1 minute. We have 1 minute to think. Or you can just tell the person next to you, what I think this. You think of something. You think of something that is shared. Because I've done this exercise many times. So you can think, anyway, I'll put up the list because we don't have much time, but, or maybe it doesn't work now. Okay, so we preach respect for the dignity of the person, which is something everybody wants. Everybody wants, absolutely 100% everybody wants respect. We preach responsibility in sexual behavior, and we think people want the free-for-all, but they don't want the free-for-all. Because when things go wrong, they say, well, that's wrong. That's wrong. We preach the value of commitment and fidelity. And you know what? Every person who gets married wants their marriage to work. Everyone, 100%. Every person wants their partner, spouse, to be faithful to them. They don't want them to be unfaithful. When people are seen to be unfaithful, like on television in a Coldplay thing, then they're very embarrassed. They want to, they want the world to end when they're seen to be unfaithful. Everybody wants to be in charge, to say, I have self-mastery, I have self-control, So, and this is just 4 of the ones that have come up in